Hi, I'm Ewan from eONE-SIXTY and we're here today to have a look at Merida's eONE-SIXTY. We were lucky enough to have spent some time on this last year, and I had the 900E, which was the all singing, all dancing top model. For 2019, things have changed very little, but for me, one of the biggest moves forward is this now comes in an extra large. Having one in extra large means it finally fits me, and I'm about 6'4", about 195 centimeters, so getting access to that size bike is pretty important to me. For 2019, this model is strangely named the Merida eONE-SIXTY Merida. That sounds a bit strange, but if you take the E and replace it with a hashtag, that's what this model is. The main makeup is based around the Shimano E8000 motor, and it has a mix of SRAM parts just to finish everything off. We've got code brakes, got a Lyric, Monarch out back, and really there's pretty much everything you want for in an e-bike here. What is good to see on this in terms of components is, rather than having Shimano's Di2 rear mech, we've got a mechanical system, which for e-bikes is pretty useful given the amount of stress that goes into rear mechs. Having a slightly cheaper and easier to replace system is really good. There's a few things that I've changed on this bike. Most of it is stock, but one of the main things is I've changed the tyres to Schwalbe's latest Eddy Current. This is an e-bike specific tyre. They are massive, 2.8, and they weigh somewhere about 1.3 kilograms. This is a chunky tyre. You'll not be putting this on your normal bike. What this has given me access to is just a ton more grip and a load more confidence. If you can see them underneath the mud there, they're certainly a chunky tyre. The only other thing we've changed is the handlebar and the stem. The cockpit didn't quite agree with me, so we've put on Spank Uzi 780 bars. They're the Vibro Core bars, which sit really nicely with this bike and take a little bit more of the sting out of the handlebars because they're filled with foam. When Merida first launched the eONE-SIXTY, they pretty much took the market by storm. It was a brilliant bike. It combined Shimano's new motor with some, for the time, great geometry, and was really good value for money. Moving forward into 2019, things haven't changed, but it's still an excellent bike. What it manages to do is ride so much like a normal bike that you can forget that you're riding an e-bike. And it does this in a few ways. First of all, it has excellent suspension that holds everything in a really composed and calm way, but also allows you to get some energy back as well. So you can pop it over the terrain, you can hop it, and it feels pretty light when you ride it. One of the downsides to it perhaps is when it comes to climbing. And when you climb with e-bikes, it's really important that you feel centered on the bike and you can keep the front end down. A lot of that comes from having a longer chainstay. And Merida have managed to keep the chainstays pretty short on this. So in one hand, that really helps with making the bike playful. But on the flip side of that, when it comes to climbing really steep terrain, you can find the front wheel lifting, and that's where you find yourself just getting a little unbalanced through the really steep climbs. One other thing that I've done to this bike that is unusual, and you may well be able to spot it, but I've actually changed the front wheel. The bike comes with 650B plus wheels, and they're 2.8s, but given the fork and the size of it, we can run a 29er on the front. So what I've done is I've put the new Eddy Current tyre on a different wheel, which is a 29er, and that means that the front is pretty much the same height, but it just allows it to roll over things a little bit better. And the stronger carcass of the tyre means that it's deflected a little bit less and you get a little bit more accuracy when you're going through the turns or any rough ground. The eONE-SIXTY is a sort of e-bike that will convert a lot of riders who are thinking about getting an e-bike. It does that by riding very much like a normal bike, a bike that doesn't have a motor. Its playful style means that when you're on the trails, you can forget, really. It rides as if it's not as heavy as it is. When you go through roots, when you go through rocks, you don't feel your wheels have to stay on the ground. You can actually play with it and perform very similar to you would on a normal bike. Sure, it's heavy, but then that comes as a real advantage when you do want to just plow through some terrain. The bike stays low, it feels stable, and with the big volume tyres run at pretty low pressures, it really feels like it's Velcro to the ground and is exceptionally smooth and calm and composed through those sections. When it comes to downsides with the eONE-SIXTY, it's focused really on climbing. That's not to say it's a bad climber. It climbs pretty well and it does have all the power. But With the short rear end and the slightly slack seat angle, when you get onto really steep stuff, the front can end up lifting and wandering. And one of the real advantages to e-bikes is their ability to climb up literally anything. And you'll find yourself looking for steeper trails and challenges to get up. So if I was to make some tweaks to it, I would certainly look to make the back end a little bit longer and steepen the seat angle up just a touch, just to bring myself forward on the bike and keep the front end tracking. The e-ONE-SIXTY represents an excellent modern e-bike. It's got the Shimano system and a bunch of great components, all packaged up in a bike that's easy to ride and confidence inspiring. It may not be able to compete quite as well on the super steep climbs and may not have really progressive geometry, but what it does is provide a really engaging and lively ride at a really good cost.